Okay, so question number 2 is which body cavity contains the peritoneum? So the peritoneum is the lining that is around your bowels and your intestines. So I guess I could argue there's two different answers to this, but really it is your abdominal cavity. Abdominal cavity. Okay, so these are all the organs of your thoracic cavities and your abdominal and pelvic cavities. So if you can get down all of these organs and where they're at, you're in pretty good shape. So I'm going to start down the patient's left side. So the thyroid gland is up here in the neck. You can kind of feel it right here. Okay. And that is what helps with immunity and weight control in adults. You have your lungs. You have two of them. And you have your aorta. So this is the main artery in your whole body. It branches off of the heart. It's the main vessel that takes blood away from the heart and takes it to the rest of the body. Okay. Then we have the spleen, which is over here off to the patient's left. Notice this is an anatomical left, not our left, because our left is the patient's right side. So we're looking at anatomical left. So the spleen is important in immunities and also regulations of the erythrocytes or red blood cells in our body. So it creates red blood cells and it also filters out the dead blood cells as well. Then we have our stomach. This just houses the food until it's able to go into the intestines to get broken down. Then we have the colon. Okay, the large intestine is also known as the colon. Now, each one of these has a different name, but we're not going to get there yet. At the very end is the sigmoid colon. So sigmoid, kind of like an S here. Okay, sigmoid means it's S-shaped. All right, now we'll go back to the top here on the right side. So we have the trachea. This is the windpipe that goes down to the bronchi that branch out to the lungs, right? So that's the trachea. That's those rings that you feel in your neck. We already talked about the lungs, the diaphragm. So this is that membrane, that muscle that goes and separates the thoracic and abdominal cavities. It's actually the driving force for our breathing. Then we have the liver. The liver focuses on metabolites that are done to the blood. It filters your blood out. Okay, then you have your gallbladder. Your gallbladder houses stomach bile, right, before it goes to the stomach. So bile is secreted by the liver and gets housed in the gallbladder until it gets released into your digestive tract. Then you have the pancreas. So that's kind of tucked away behind the stomach, and this is the organ in your endocrine system that produces insulin and glucagon, but it also is part of your digestive system, and it releases pancreatic amylase, which breaks down carbohydrates. All right, we already talked about the colon. Your appendix hangs off of the first part of your large intestine here. Okay, and it plays a role in immunities, kind of part of the lymphatic system, if you will, to kind of trap bad things that have made it through your small intestine into your large intestine. And then you have your urinary bladder right here down at the bottom. Okay, so make sure you know which one is your abdominal cavity, what is your cranial cavity, your diaphragm. What does dorsal mean? Okay, it means posterior, you're behind, right? So I drew that picture of the dolphin with the dorsal fin in class. And we have the mediastinum, okay, pelvic cavity, peritoneum, pleura, pleural cavity, spinal cavity, thoracic cavity, and ventral, which is the front. Okay. All right. These are the abdominal pelvic regions. So remember how we could split it into 9 different regions? So those, if you remember, the hypochondriac are at the top. Then on the sides you have the lumbar region, and then at the bottom you have the inguinal or iliac region. And then in the center, at the very top, you have the epigastric, then the umbilical, and then the hypogastric. All right. So we can also separate things into quadrants in your abdomen. So it's literally just takes it and crosses it down where it points in your belly button is the very center. And then it's upper right, upper left, and lower right. So make sure you know these abbreviations. They're very important, especially when you start looking at patient charting and describing where a patient has abdominal pain. Okay. All right. Anatomical divisions of the back. So at the very top of your spine, right, your head sits on your spine. So your neck, right, you have 5 cervical vertebrae. 5 cervical vertebrae, that's your neck. Then you have your thoracic, which are the vertebrae that align with your thoracic cavity. And you have lumbar. So these are very big around vertebra in your lower back. And your sacrum, the sacral region, is kind of the area in between your hips. And it's a bunch of fused bones all together. And then you have the coccygeal, which is your coccyx, down at the very bottom of your tailbone. Okay. Yes, humans have a tail. All right. So here's your cervical, your thoracic, okay? And you have lumbar, sacral, coccyx. Okay, so that kind of gives you a pictorial representation of where everything is on your back. Those are really important to know because they kind of shorten it to identify like C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. And thoracic is T1, T2, T3, T4. Your lower ones are L1, L2, L3. And notice in between your spine, your vertebra are discs. So those are cartilage, and they kind of help cushion and make your back flexible. Okay. All right. Abdominal pelvic region. So we already talked about that. We talked about the quadrants. Okay. Divisions of the back. All right. A vertebra is just one backbone. Vertebrae is more than one. That's the plural. Spinal column is your vertebra with your spinal cord. Then you have your spinal cord that runs through the center of your vertebra. The discs are those cartilaginous discs in between each vertebra. Now, quick question before we get on to our next video. Name the abdominal pelvic region that is located in the central region near the navel. Near the navel. So your belly button. Is it inguinal, umbilical, lumbar, or hypochondriac? Okay. If you said B, umbilical, you were correct. Name the abdominal pelvic region that is located in the lower middle below the umbilical region. Okay, so that's in the center at the very bottom. Is it inguinal, epigastric, lumbar, or hypogastric? If you said hypogastric, that's correct, right? Because that means pertaining to below the stomach. All right, and we'll end right there. We'll pick it up with our next video.